Have you ever been stuck in a karmic loop cycle in a relationship or with yourself that you've never been able to get out of? Well, here we're going to dive a little bit into this today, so if you're interested, then by all means, watch this video. So to understand if we're in a karmic loop, we need to understand firstly what karma is. Karma means actions, and it can also mean the unharvested results of past actions that we're yet to discover for ourselves. And these can both be positive, of course, and of course we know these can be negative too for oneself. So what's a karmic cycle? Well, a karmic cycle inside of ourselves is some sort of repeating tendency that we keep expressing, be that internally inside of ourselves through negative thought patterns, but also it could be externally and why we're attracting certain things into our lives. It can come down to our behaviour, and therefore because of our behaviour we get a certain thing back from the world, but it can also mean inside of ourselves the way that we're talking to ourselves and how we might be able to then change that karmic loop inside of us. So let's give an example of a karmic loop, and I must apologise because my eyes look really sweaty and moist, and that's because they are. It is so hot here today in the UK, and I've had to close the window because people were being noisy outside, but nonetheless I digress. We'll get on with this video. Let's use the example of a karmic loop like abuse of control in a sexual orientation. So let's say we are quite controlling, quite manipulative sexually, okay? Or at least let's say we've been that way in the past. Well, as soon as we do that action, we must think to ourselves, so that we know the result in ourselves, how is this person going to be feeling about this thing that I'm doing to them? And the answer is, well, let's look at murder. Of course, none of us are going to do that, hopefully. But what would the person feel like if they were being murdered? Well, they'd feel a lack of trust and a disempowered feeling inside themselves. They'd feel pain as the weapon came and hit them, and then they'd have they'd reach their death moment, wouldn't they? They'd also feel quite a lot of fear. So if we were to murder, and we're not going to, of course, but let's just use this example, then what would the karmic cycle be for me? Well, if I was the one doing the murdering, well, the karmic cycle would then be that I must have a mind full, after I've done the murder, I would have a mind full of fear. I would karmically be made to feel very disempowered and to not be able to trust myself, so I'd have to be asking everybody else how to make my decisions. And then I'd have a very long, drawn-out, painful death. This is what we're talking about with karmic cycles. Let's go back to the abuse of sexual power or control in manipulation in sexual ways. If we're controlling people for love or manipulating people for love in these ways, well then how would that make the other person feel? Well, it would give them a rather low self-esteem, I'm sure. It would make them be quite critical of their sexual performance and sexual identity inside oneself, lots of self-judgment, and they would be unable to have intimacy with others because they've just shut down. And therefore, we might recognise that therefore the karmic cycle for us, the karmic debt that we'd have to pay off, would be exactly that. We would then feel, if we had done that to another person, we would be plunged into a fear of intimacy. We would be plunged into critical thoughts around sexual performance. And then we would, of course, that would lead to very, very low self-esteem. These are the karmic cycles. Now, these karmic cycles that we go through are, yes, created through our actions, but they continue in the way of samskaras in our mind. Samskaras just means mental or emotional tendencies that we have. And these tendencies would come in the form of low self-esteem, self-abuse, self-critical thoughts around sexual performance, things like this. all because of our karma of the past. Now, karma can obviously go before our lifetime too. So when we come into a new life, let's say we died that way, the new karma will be reborn into our system as we are reborn here. And that's why we might have these default tendencies, these default samskaras inside of ourselves in this life, if we perhaps haven't done anything wrong or out of alignment in this physical existence. Now, hard to hear sometimes, and we, I suppose, will never really know if that's true, because we don't know our past lives. But there is one hope for us, because in the principle of aparigraha, meaning non-attachment and non-possessiveness, when one is so unattached and so non-possessive and they've become pure inside, they are allowed to know their previous lives and future lives. It's that karmic chain that they're allowed to see. Now, do I know this in myself? No. I'm just going along the teaching lines of the yogic tradition. And in fact, this is mentioned in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So if you're interested in going deeper into your yogic knowledge, you're more than welcome to work out Google and work out what the Yoga Sutras means. May I say, they're very hard to find a good book on it, because they're obviously old ancient Sanskrit language. So one really good one is The Practice of the Yoga Sutra, Sadhana Pada, and that's the title of the book. Anyway, again, I digress. How do we get out of these karmic cycles then? When we're in one, we're in one. Well, we've got to pay back the karmic debt, and there's a whole host of ways that we can do that. One, I'm sure, time will do it, because we'll just get so frustrated with the guilt that we feel and the sadness and the low self-esteem, so that will work. But we can speed up and accelerate our awakening process, and the only way out of these karmic cycles is in. So we have to engage in some yogic sadhana. Yogic sadhana is your daily spiritual practices that will bring about the highest aliveness of energy and highest potential in your life. It will change your destiny. Let's just say we have tendencies inside of ourselves, which we all do, these samskaras. Well, if we just go by our tendencies, our life will end up a certain way because we've lived out through our tendencies, and we'll call it fate or destiny. But in fact, this isn't destiny. Our life can take a whole new different direction by changing these samskaras, by changing these tendencies, and the way we do that is to uproot the impure tendencies, and we do this by dedication to yogic sadhana. If you wish, you're more than welcome to sign up for the new Living Yoga Method monthly pass that I've offered down below. It's, I think, the most affordable thing on the internet. And that's available for you down below. It's brand spanking new. As well, there's a free breathing practice down below that you're more than welcome to sign up for. There's a free community on Facebook that you're more than welcome to sign up for. And of course, as always, you can apply for the one-to-one coaching. It's free to apply. It's not free for the coaching, unfortunately, because I have to live and eat and be financially independent in this world. I'd love to give this stuff for free, but of course, I can't. So, back to the video. Sadhana is one way, and we must engage in sadhana. There are no two ways about it, unfortunately. It just must be done should we wish to accelerate and change the trajectory of our life by changing the samskaras, by changing the unconscious tendencies in oneself. There is another way, and this way, according to sage Patanjali, is a way in which that we don't have to harvest. Said earlier, karma is actions, but karma is also the unharvested energy from our actions. We don't have negative and positive. There is one way that we don't have to harvest that negative result from our past karmas. Let's say we did do wrong in the past, and this is a principle called Pratipak. And this requires honesty in oneself. We have to be honest about what's going on in our mind. We first must acknowledge that negative thoughts are going on, like guilt, like sadness, like low self-esteem thoughts, and we must change the vibration of those thoughts to something completely the opposite. So we must develop this ability to alchemize our thoughts into ones that are literally in the opposite directions, with feelings of love and bliss, wonder and joy and forgiveness. And that's Pratipak, that's that practice. I hope this video helps. I hope that it brings some enthusiasm in ourselves and some hope that yes, maybe we've not acted completely in alignment all of our lives, and that's okay that we haven't, but there is hope should we wish to take responsibility for our actions and change the samskaras, the thought patterns, the tendencies in oneself, so that we may not have to harvest the negative benefit of our previous karmic actions. Have yourself a lovely evening.